Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, you know, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Hello, my name is Spencer, and in my podcast called The Dictionary, I literally read from the dictionary, but add in my personal comments and stupid jokes to make it more interesting. Episodes are family-friendly, short, and air every single day on basically every podcast platform. Come join me on this journey filled with edutainment.
Hello and welcome to How Did This Not Get Made?
This is the podcast all about the movies you never saw, the scripts that were never filmed, and the ideas that never even made it to the page. My name is David Spencer.
My name is Daniel Kaka.
And I'm Emma Hull.
Welcome, Emma, to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
The topic we're getting into, I think the first thing you said when we started this Zoom call is that you're very excited for some Joss Whedon slander.
Just a little bit.
He's a very easy target right now, and for good reason.
Yeah. It's not like I'm out here trying to snipe at someone who maybe doesn't really deserve it.
Yeah. Before we go too much into Joss Whedon, because I definitely want to share some of my opinions, Dan, we should probably talk about what the subject of today is.
Yeah, so we are talking about Wonder Woman. We are going to go through the history of Wonder Woman. We're going to go through the history of the creator of Wonder Woman because he has quite a colorful past. And we are going to be covering the unproduced Joss Whedon Wonder Woman movie and the controversies that followed that. But before we get into that, I just kind of want to get everyone's history with Wonder Woman. How do you know the character? Emma, I'm going to start off with you. What is your relationship with Wonder Woman?
My relationship with Wonder Woman is a complicated one. I was not a big comics reader when I was a kid. I watched some of the Linda Carter show with my mom when I was little because she really loved Wonder Woman and was like, oh, I'm going to share this with you. I remember very distinctly a Bones episode where Temperance Brennan dresses up like Wonder Woman for Halloween. And that was largely my entire context for the character was Linda Carter and Temperance Brennan. As I got older, superhero movies got more popular. I got more interested. I never really gravitated towards the DC universe. Not that there's anything wrong with it. It's just, I was more interested in the stories Marvel was telling. And then the Wonder Woman movie came out and I was like, oh, I'm going to go learn about this. This seems like it's kind of a big deal. People seem to be saying that it's better than some of the other films that are coming out for DC. And that was kind of where my complicated journey with Wonder Woman began.
Yeah.
That's me on Wonder Woman. She's fascinating.
David, how about you?
Well, I know I've talked before on this podcast that I was never too much into DC heroes. Wonder Woman especially, trying to think of a way to say this in a way that doesn't make me sound like a terrible person. It really felt like whenever I saw Wonder Woman in things, it was very clearly the suit saying, oh, we got to have someone in there for the girls, as opposed to actual interesting things about her. I didn't really know much about who she was as a character, and it did feel very much just we got to throw this one in there. It was always also kind of weird to me how she had all of this gear that had different names and did different things, and I never really got who she was. And granted, again, I wasn't really super into DC stuff anyways at the time, but I kind of had that feeling with a lot of the DC characters is they all had 15 different little things about them that I'm just expected to keep track of, as opposed to I feel like I could pretty easily get who Captain America is. Boom. It's right there in the name. You can see the personality and it kind of fits together and doesn't feel as much like all these kind of disjointed pieces. Like Emma said, I saw the Wonder Woman movie when that came out a couple years ago, and I enjoyed it. I didn't love it as much as a lot of the critical acclaim was at the time, but I think part of that might have been because I think a lot of people were comparing it to the other DC movies, which I hadn't watched at all. So I was like, yeah, this seems like a pretty fine, solid superhero movie. Since I wasn't comparing it to the glut of garbage, it wasn't that impressive to me. But I do love, mostly ironically, when Wonder Woman 1984 came out, that movie is not a good movie, but I had such a good time watching that movie. It is so weird and unhinged, especially everything about Pedro Pascal in that movie is so good. And I am just like writing fan fiction in my head where Pedro Pascal's character goes on adventure with Sam Rockwell's character from Iron Man 2, because those are like the two like ridiculous billionaire superhero villains, and I just want them to be friends.
So for me, with Wonder Woman, it's always been around, and I think I'm the only one here. I've stated this before that I am a DC fanboy, have been from the beginning. I think a lot of it had to do with Tim Burton and Batman Returns. Like, I've worn out that VHS copy. I always knew about Wonder Woman. The thing is that at my age, that impressionable age, there wasn't much content for her. So a lot of knowing about her was like out of context. So like my entire life, I always knew about the lasso of truth. That's always been brought up as like something that you associate with Wonder Woman, but I didn't fully understand who the character was. But I knew that in the DC universe, there was the main three. There was Batman, there was Superman, and there was Wonder Woman.
Correct me if I'm wrong in this, but I feel like what I grew up with as a kid, especially cartoons at the time, Batman had his own series, Superman had his whole movie series and stuff already, and I don't remember if there were standalone Superman cartoons.
That was in the late 90s.
Okay.
There was a Superman animated show.
But I don't remember Wonder Woman ever being anything unless she was a part of the Justice League, as opposed to her being able to have her own story.
Yeah, she never had her own animated series like Batman and Superman. So she was always part of the Justice League, and that's kind of how she bled into a lot of the mainstream. And that was more around like the early 2000s, late 2000s is when she became more relevant in that case, or at least in the modern age. Like you two mentioned, the movie coming out, Patty Jenkins' movie, like that is when the Wonder Woman obsession just exploded. And
absolutely,
I was in the right place at the right time. I was actually working at Warner Brothers when that happened. In fact, the shirt that I have right here is actually a promotional shirt saying that the movie is going to be coming out June 2nd. I got to actually watch the movie on the Warner Brothers lot, like at their theater, and their theater is amazing. Like the sound in that theater is just absolutely incredible. This is where directors will go in there to like screen their movies to know what it's actually going to feel like, or at least experience what the audience is going to experience in a theater. Like this is where they go to, and I got to see that Wonder Woman movie in that theater, and it was just amazing.
Not to say that your amazing experience is wrong or something, but I feel like film nerds and critics don't put enough stock into the fact that the experience you have when watching the movie and the conditions you were in when you watched a movie play such a massive role into your enjoyment. And I could totally see how if I saw this on the Warner Brothers lot in that fancy theater, I probably would have loved it as opposed to streaming it on my TV at home while I'm looking at my phone.
So I was just like immersed in the whole thing. And then we had our own museum as well that actually had the actual costumes and some of the set pieces from the movie. And I was just around that all the time. So it was just, whether I liked it or not, I was completely immersed in it.
I will say, seeing the Patty Jenkins Wonder Woman, I remember distinctly like leaving the theater and like saying to my partner at the time, this was the first time that I've seen a superhero movie where I didn't feel like I had to turn off the feminist part of my brain. Mm-hmm. Because I think Patty Jenkins in that film specifically did do a good job of humanizing her and making her feel real and respected in a way that I hadn't seen in a lot of other films, superhero films like specifically. So I will say that about Wonder Woman is that it was the first time that I walked into a superhero movie and was able to just like enjoy it without having to like switch off the like feminist critic that's constantly on in my brain.
It really did feel like the character was taken care of.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I was thinking about when we were talking about the way Wonder Woman was always just part of the Justice League or paired off with other people in, original cartoons, similar to the way Black Widow was treated through most of Marvel movies. And part of the reason why she is always felt like kind of an underdeveloped character, especially in the first batch of films, because it was just like, she's just there to be the token girl and not be somebody else.
It's funny that you mentioned Black Widow.
Are we going to get into how certain filmmakers treated Black Widow in superhero movies later?
I don't want to derail anything, but I do have notes.
So before we go into that, I do want to take us back and really explore the origins of Wonder Woman. This is something we've done before with the Justice League, Batman, Superman, and I will say that as far as my research goes, my notes goes, I have never done a character that is this in-depth. With this, hopefully I have a better understanding of the character. Hopefully you two and our audience will have a much better understanding of who Wonder Woman actually is.
I don't know how true this is, but just from what I've heard about the personal life of the creator of Wonder Woman and his relationship and like how that informed the character and stuff, which I'm really interested in getting into, it really feels like on a general sense that in biopics, there's this trope of somebody seeing something in their real life and that inspires the song they wrote or something like that. Mm-hmm. And it seems like that trope is actually true for a lot of things about Wonder Woman, which is really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's get started.
How to have fun anytime, anywhere. Step 1. Go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2. Collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3. Play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4. Unleash your excitement.
Woohoo!
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
So Wonder Woman was first published on October 21st in 1941 in All-Star Comics number 8. To put in perspective, this is 3 years after Superman's first appearance and 2 years after Batman. The creation of Wonder Woman has been credited to William Moulton Marston, who at the time was a famous psychologist and was the inventor of the polygraph machine. Now, to understand how famous he was, think of someone who was like Carl Sagan, Bill Nye, or even like Neil deGrasse Tyson today.
I don't want to see Neil deGrasse Tyson's superhero.
He's another one that's on my list. He's a
superhero that just comes in and he goes,
actually.
To keep his reputation as a psychologist separate from his comic book work, he would oftentimes be credited under his pen name Charles Moulton. To better understand the origin of Wonder Woman, we do need to better understand Marston and the women who inspired him, which would reflect this character. When Marston was a freshman at Harvard University back in 1911, he got caught up in a major controversy happening on campus. That fall, the Harvard Men's League for Women's Suffrage invited Emmeline Pankhurst, an English political activist who organized the UK suffragette movement and help women win the right to vote. She was invited to speak at the Sanders Theater, which is the campus's largest lecture hall. The one major obstacle that they had to overcome was a policy that women were not allowed to speak on campus. Now, news of this spread all over the country, and this actually put Harvard in a negative light. Now, Pankhurst and her fellow activists, they were known for chaining themselves to the gates of 10 Downing Street. They would get arrested in order to get their message to be heard. At Harvard, to work around this absurd rule, the club then arranged for her to then speak off campus at the Brattle Street in Harvard Square. She was able to get her message out there. It was the use of those chains that Marston would find inspiration from and use for Wonder Woman. Now, he would say that when she was bound and chained, it would signify her emancipation from men. Bondage and chains were a major symbol in women's liberation. There was even a collection of multiple letters that were sent to Margaret Sanger. Now, she was a nurse, a sex educator, and an activist. A lot of these letters were women asking how to prevent unwanted pregnancies throughout the 1920s. And about 500 of them were compiled together, and they were actually published in a book that was called Motherhood in Bondage. Back to William Moulton Marston. Soon after he graduated from Harvard in 1915, he got married to his childhood sweetheart, Sadie Elizabeth Holloway, who also graduated the same year, but from Mount Holyoke with a degree in psychology. William would later get his law degree in 1918. The same year, his wife got her law degree from Boston University School of Law, and then William got his PhD in psychology in 1921. Both were very highly educated and suited each other very well. Sadie assisted William while he was working on his thesis and would actually prove the correlation between blood pressure levels and deception. This would lead William to develop a machine that could detect changes in individuals' blood pressure, which would be called the cytolic blood pressure test, which would be known today as the polygraph or the lie detector.
I just want to say, prove, I feel like, is a little, because I think now we're starting to recognize how flawed polygraph machines are.
Now, these aren't 100% accurate, right?
Well, you'd be surprised how accurate they are. They can tell fairly easily if someone's lying or not.
But certainly that was an influential thing at the time.
Oh, yeah. William got his first teaching job at American University. After losing that job, he found another teaching job at Tufts University. In 1924, he fell in love with one of his students, a senior named Olive Byrne, daughter of Ethel Byrne, whose sister is Margaret Sanger, which I had mentioned before, who published the book The Motherhood in Bondage. Both Ethel and Margaret were significant because they opened the first birth control clinic in the U.S. in 1916. It was located in Brooklyn, which is now known today as Planned Parenthood. When they opened it, they were immediately arrested and they were sent to prison for 30 days for obscenity. Margaret made a deal with the governor of New York that if Ethel was no longer involved with the birth control movement, she would be pardoned. So after that, Ethel disappeared from the movement while Margaret pushed on as an activist. With the help of Margaret's husband, Ethel was able to send his daughter, Olive, to Tufts University. And there, Olive fell in love with a psychology professor who had some pretty unconventional ideas about sex and gender. William had told his wife about Olive and gave her an ultimatum. Either Olive gets to live with them in a polyamorous relationship, or he will leave her for Olive. Now, Sadie, she was actually working in Washington at the time. I don't know how to prove this, but in the book all about this relationship, it said that she had took a 6-hour walk to, I guess, mull this over.
So specific.
It is. It was very weird and specific, but I'm going to take their word for it that she had to think this over for 6 hours just walking around. But knowing that she wanted to start a family soon, but also wanted to keep her career, she agreed to the arrangement with the thought that she could have children, but then Olive could actually help raise those children while she worked. So they kept the arrangement a secret, even to the children. Together, they all lived in the suburbs of Rye, New York. They came up with a story that if anyone were to ask about their arrangement, the story was that Olive was married to a man named William Richard in 1928 in Los Angeles. So Marston in real life was actually the director of public services and taught at the University of Southern California in 1929. Back to the made-up story. While Olive and William Richard were married, they had 2 kids before he died due to being gassed in the war. Unfortunately, she had lost every single picture of him, and since the story was so painful, no one really asked any further questions. Also helps that William and Sadie were the inventors of the lie detector, so why would they question if they were being lied to? There was also a third woman down the line. Her name was Marjorie Wilkes Huntley. She lived in the attic. She came in and out a lot. She has nothing to do with the creation of Wonder Woman, but I just want to bring that up because I didn't want to leave her out because there's just a lot more people part of this. What's ironic is that Olive got a staff writing job at Family Circle magazine, all about how to raise children in the most conventional way. Conventional being like there's 2 parents, you live in the suburbs, dad goes off on his job. Yeah, so you get it. But while she was writing that, she was also living in the most unconventional lifestyle that most people would think of. As we covered before, in the 1930s was the introduction of comic books and superheroes, most predominantly Superman and Batman. Now, kids were devouring the material, but There was a big wave of criticism that thought these comics were bad for children. They thought Superman was a fascist because he was just all-powerful and could just do whatever he want. And then Batman was just a straight-up murderer, which... that's not wrong. We covered this in our Batman episode, is that every villain that he had, he just like killed them. He's like, well, that solves that problem. Cool. And then everyone at DC is like, well, we can't use that character anymore.
Not gonna lie, I don't completely disagree with either of those criticisms of Superman or Batman.
I brought it up because like they're valid.
Oh, yeah.
In 1940, Chicago Daily News literary editor Sterling North denounced comic books, claiming that they were, quote, a poisonous mushroom growth of the last 2 years, and that the publishers were, quote, guilty of a cultural slaughter of the innocent.
Much like TikTok.
Yeah. On October 25th, in 1940, Family Circle magazine put out an interview with William Marston, which was conducted by Olive Byrne, under the pseudonym Olive Richard. This was titled Don't Laugh at Comics. So this was actually a rebuttal to North's unproven claim and defended comic books. He saw that they had a, quote, great educational potential, and saw comic books as a modern mythology in the fact Superman had a lot in common with mythology that had been around for centuries. The interview actually caught the attention of Max Gaines and Jack Leibowitz, publishers at All American Publications, which would then be absorbed into national periodicals, which we now know today as DC Comics. At first, they hired him as an educational consultant, but Marston thought it would be best if he could create his own superhero.
I gotta say, every 10 years, some new technology or some new form of media is widely criticized as being poisonous for the masses and everything. The funny thing about that is, like, a lot of times it's like, okay, there is something in some of this content that is bad, you're right, but I like that this guy was like, it's not the medium that is wrong, the medium is fantastic and can be used for amazing things. Instead of let's shut down this scary new thing, it's let's go and add to it and create something more positive.
Oh, yeah. And my favorite story of like someone capitalizing on that was the manager for Elvis. So he actually made up 2 pins. He made a Elvis pin, and then he made a second pin that said like Elvis is evil or like Elvis is bad or like just anti-Elvis pins. And he sold those as well. He's going to make his own superhero. So he wanted to make a superhero that was different, a hero that wouldn't have to rely on fists or firepower, but with love. He consulted the idea with his wife, and the suggestion that she came up with was, quote, make her a woman. So he came up with a hero pitch to Sheldon Mayer and Max Gaines, and that hero's name was Suprema, the Wonder Woman. And that was not going to fly. My suspicion is that Suprema is really similar to the name Superman. That's my guess. And also, letters are expensive to print. So if you can shorten that down, instead of putting Suprema the Wonder Woman, that's a really long title.
Yeah.
To help sell them on making a female superhero, he said, quote, look, if you had a female superhero, her powers could all be about love, truth, and beauty. And you could also sell comic books better to girls. And that would be really important and great because she could show girls that they can do anything.
How to have fun anytime, anywhere. Step 1. Go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2. Collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3. Play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4. Unleash your excitement.
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
So for Wonder Woman's costume and appearance, she was first drawn like a Varga girl. It was a type of pinup girl. Oftentimes you would see it in the centerfolds of Esquire magazine. Sometimes you would see them painted on the sides of like fighter jets in like World War II. Even her costume resembles a swimsuit. So Varga girls, they were very leggy, healthy, athletic, and oftentimes not American, giving her the, quote, exotic look. Now, this worked well for Wonder Woman because she is not from America, even though she sports red, white, and blue. Although Superman wasn't from Earth, he's also portrayed as like this all-American hero. In fact, Batman is the only hero that's actually from the US, and he's in all black.
I think that it was really interesting. She talked about her character design and how they wanted to sell Wonder Woman to little girls by like making her look like a pinup. Sexualization of minors aside, like that has like a really like inherently broken conceit that all little girls want to grow up to have husbands, and they all want to grow up to be someone who can be a good homemaker. There is a perspective from like maybe an adult female in that time period who is living in a society where she can't be a sexual person, she can't be an adult, where like that could be appealing. But we hadn't yet reached the point where we could actually like challenge the idea that women could be something other than this like beautiful domestic person.
Now, this is not confirmed, but there is speculation that Wonder Woman's face is based on Betty Davis, especially the first iterations of Wonder Woman. If you look at her eyes, because Betty Davis has like very distinct eyes. And if you look at hers, they're like very similar to each other. Now, there was heavy criticism thrown at Marston. He is known for being a feminist. This hero is meant to be a female hero that girls could look up to, and yet she is dressed in a way that could be considered like scantily clad. And at first glance, they seem, I guess, well, titillating. Maybe he saw these pinup girls using their looks in a more empowering way to give them the benefit of the doubt, or maybe in just a way to get boys interested at first in this hero, and then hit them with feminist point of views. Like how there was a storyline that Wonder Woman actually encouraged women to strike for equal pay. Also, there was a storyline where she ran for president. Now, to illustrate Wonder Woman, Marston hired Harry G. Peter. This was an interesting selection because he wasn't involved in comics, nor was he really the best artist. The reason Marston chose him is because he was an illustrator for Judge magazine, where he worked on editorial cartoons that featured suffragettes. To help write the character, Marston hired Joy Hummel, who was a former psychology student for William. Now, to inspire her, Olive Byrne actually gave her aunt's book, Women in the New Race, and told her that if you read this, you'll know how to write Wonder Woman. This is probably why so many of her early stories of Wonder Woman feature being bound and chained as a symbol of the suffragette movement, although it can also be seen as a fetishism. Now, the idea of featuring these suffragettes carried over into Wonder Woman when she got her first standalone comic in June 1942, and they actually would dedicate about 1 to 4 pages in every book, and they would title it Wonder Women of History, and actually told a story in comic book format of real women who made a difference in the world. The first Wonder Woman comic was actually published in 1942. Now, this is the fastest time for a comic book hero to go from a compilation comic to a solo comic. So, since Marston viewed comics as an educational component, he drew a lot of inspiration from Greek gods and goddesses. So in All-Star Comics number 8, Wonder Woman was not born, but instead sculpted out of clay by her mother Hippolyta and brought to life. She is described as the perfect Amazon because she was not born from a man. Now, in the new 52 storyline, Diana's father is Zeus. For the other Amazonians, they would have to lure in unsuspecting sailors in order to get them pregnant. They would kill off the men once they were done. They would just throw them off the boat, and they would oftentimes discard the male babies. We're not going to get into the new 52 stuff.
What a loving view of women.
Yeah. Back to the original origins. To guarantee that Diana would become the ultimate warrior, she was given 6 gifts from 6 gods and goddesses. Demeter gave her power and strength. Aphrodite was beauty and a loving heart. Athena, wisdom. Artemis, the eye of the hunter and unity with the beasts. Hestia, sisterhood with fire that may open men's hearts to hunt. Although in Greek mythology, the name would also be known to be Artemis. In the 1994 Wonder Woman Volume 2, number 90, they actually used that name for a different warrior to take up the mantle and the outfit of Wonder Woman to prevent Diana's death, which was envisioned by her mother. And then Diana was raised on Paradise Island, which would then later change to Themyscira in 1987 in Wonder Woman Volume 2, number 1. We'll go over the change of Paradise Island and Themyscira, but that was way, way down the line. Diana's knowledge of the arts, science, and language of the modern and ancient times was taught to her by Hippolyta's magic spear, which would go through a gauntlet of different names, like there was the Mirror of Hephaestus, the Magic Mirror, and the Silver Mirror. It's through this magic spear that they can spy on the world of men, just in case they need to interfere. But in this story, she actually sees Steve Trevor, who is, quote, the most valuable man in Army intelligence, who's captured by German pilot Fritz and Officer von Storm. So Fritz uses Steve's plane to bomb an American base. While that's happening, Steve escapes and takes one of the German planes. He flies as far as he can until the fuel runs out, in which he discovers a mysterious island and then has to crash land on it. Hippolyta prays to Aphrodite and Athena about what to do. They appear before her and instruct her to send the greatest Wonder Woman to deliver the American Army officer back to America to protect the country because, quote, America is the last citadel of democracy and equal rights for women.
Hey. Yeah, totally.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
Yeah. Keep in mind that this was set in World War II and the war was currently happening, so there's a lot of propaganda.
There's a lot going on there.
Yeah. In fact, many of the comics contained ads that read, like, support the troops, and they provided information on how to buy war bonds. In this, Steve Trevor is unconscious because of his head injury. Diana offers to bring him back to America, but Hippolyta refuses. She instead holds a contest to find the most worthy Wonder Woman to take on this mission. Diana sneaks into the competition and uses a domino mask to disguise her face. So a domino mask is like very similar to like the Zorro mask. Now the contest boils down to two women, Mala and Diana. To determine the winner, they play a game called Bullets and Bracelets.
Two Amazons are now tied for the honor. There is only one way to break the deadlock. Bullets and bracelets.
In which the opponent gets to shoot 5 bullets at each other and they use bracelets to block the shots.
Nice. Safety.
Diana wins the competition and surprises her mother after removing the mask.
I'm sorry, Mother, but it was the only way.
Mala was not killed, just so you know. She got scathed, so... Wonder Woman is also known for having her gauntlets, which she wears on her wrist, known as the Bracelets of Submission or the Bracelets of Victory. At first, they look like black leather bracelets, but would later become these larger silver gauntlets, which she would use to deflect bullets. The initial story behind the bracelets was that they were a reminder to the Amazons of their oppression under Hercules, and they had to fight for their independence. In real life, this was actually an homage to Olive Byrne, who wore 2 thick silver bands around her wrists as a symbol for her love between her and William. In later interpretations in the comics, the Bracelets of Submission were given to the Amazons at age 15 as their pledge to Aphrodite and would be used as training known as Bullets and Bracelets. In the New Earth run, Wonder Woman had a unique pair of bracelets crafted from Hephaestus from the remains of Zeus's shield, known as Aggies. They had these red stars on them, and it was given to her after winning a contest of bullets and bracelets. Now, David, I think you have a interesting story to bring up about these bracelets.
Basically, at the summer camp I work at, we were talking about superheroes, and one day this student was like, oh yeah, my grandma actually named the Wonder Woman's bracelets. And I was like, whoa, that's crazy. And I tried looking it up and was like, okay, don't see any specific information on who named Wonder Woman's bracelets, but I do see that the bracelets were inspired by the bracelets that his partner wore. I didn't say this to the kid, but I was thinking, it's like, is this kid's grandma the partner of the creator of Wonder Woman? And hasn't been explained to him what that meant? Yeah, anyways.
That's pretty great, though. That connection is that close to you, though.
Oh, yeah.
After the competition, Diana is given an outfit that would help her fit in America. It was a red corset with a golden bald eagle on the chest, a gold tiara with a red star, there was red boots, and there was a blue skirt with white stars. For Wonder Woman's skirt, it would only really appear on like the cover art and sometimes on some of the splash pages. For the most part, and probably for modesty, in the pages, she was typically just wearing shorts. Diana was also given a lasso of truth, which was formed from Aphrodite's girdle. Obviously, this is a reference to the polygraph machine, but Marston was not so subtle when it came to Steve Trevor, an intelligence operative and officer for the United States Army Corps, in which he used the polygraph to interrogate enemies.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
In 1942, Sensations Comics #1, we are introduced to the transparent plane. We didn't get the term invisible jet until the TV show starring Linda Carter. She takes the plane, and the still unconscious Steve Trevor, like, this is a pretty bad injury if he's been gone for this long. Anyway, he's still unconscious, flies him over, and brings him to Walter Reed Hospital in the US. After dropping him off, she goes off shopping for clothes to make her fit in. While out shopping, she's met with some gangsters in which she throws their cars into a building, and then when they try to shoot at her, she actually deflects them with her bracelets. She gets noticed by a producer that puts on sideshows, and she agrees to perform a bullets and bracelets routine to make money. When she has enough money, she goes back to Steve Trevor, who is still unconscious.
That's one hell of a head wound.
Yeah. I mean, it is a plane crash, so yeah.
Well, it's been a couple days at this point.
Yeah. As she's walking up the steps to Walter Reed, Diana spots a crying nurse who looks exactly like her. So she stops to ask her a few questions, in which the nurse reveals that her name is Diana Prince. Her boyfriend has been sent to South America, and she has no money to visit him so that they can get married. With the money that Wonder Woman has recently earned, she actually gives it all to the nurse in exchange for her identity.
So convenient.
Yeah. Once Steve finally wakes up, he actually breaks out of the hospital so that he can go and fight Nazis.
Nazis. I hate these guys.
In the Wonder Woman show, most of the episodes are about Wonder Woman defeating the Nazis and just in general fighting them. Throughout the series, Steve is in love with Wonder Woman but has no idea that Diana Prince is her alter ego.
That is kind of like where I really struggle with her, because like on the one hand, I want to see a strong woman in media, but it's really hard to buy into this concept of like a strong female character when she is consistently defining her strength in the way that a male-dominated society defines strength. From Marston, not even girls want to be girls so long as our feminine archetype lacks force, strength, and power. Not wanting to be girls, they don't want to be tender, submissive, peace-loving as good women are. Women's strong qualities have become despised because of their weaknesses. Their obvious remedy is to create a feminine character with all of the strength of Superman, plus the allure of a good and beautiful woman, which is frustrating because that tells me that if I want to be strong, I have to adhere to like a masculine definition of strength. I have to be Superman and also be the perfect woman. That's not feminism. That's just a male power fantasy of like what they want to see women be. And that is not coming from like a genuine place of what women want to see women be.
I know this is probably an oversimplification, but it's like the phrase strong female characters and female characters who are strong.
Yeah, that's a little bit of an oversimplification. There is nothing wrong with seeing a strong woman. Mm-hmm. The best character that I can think of that is sort of in line with this is Bismuth from Steven Universe.
Okay.
Describe her.
Hang on a sec.
Hey, wait!
She's big.
Huh? Hey, don't go!
With rainbow hair and tattoos.
Rainbow hair? What does her gem look like?
It's an innie.
She's a character who is obviously female. She's obviously coded to be black. She is muscular. She's a blacksmith. She makes these fantastic weapons. But at the end of the day, she still has this like softer side where she can be in touch with her feelings and she can talk to people. And her first thing that she reaches for is not always violence. But time and time again, the thing that we see with Wonder Woman that she immediately reaches for is, oh, I'm going to like come in guns blazing and start shooting. Not shooting, but like, you know, beating the crap out of people.
to me, when I think of that kind of a character, I think of Katara in Avatar: The Last Airbender.
That's actually like a really, really good comparison, because she is someone who has like a lot of physical strength and has this inherent ability to like come in and kick ass if she has to. But it's not her first choice. Her first choice is always like, let's talk about it. Let's see if there's another way. Let's try to like preserve life and preserve peace first and foremost. She does it often in a way that like disrupts the status quo around her. That's something else that's like really inherent to like Bismuth's character arc in Steven Universe. She is someone who's willing to stand up to authority and say like, no, there's something else going on here that's not right. That is something that we see with Katara, where she's able to say like, no, there's something else going on here that's not right.
Yeah.
They're both able to kind of like disrupt the systems that confine them. And we never really see that with Wonder Woman. She just sort of like walks into a hospital and was like, oh, I guess I'm going to be a nurse. Cool. And it's like, no,
Yeah.
let's not do that.
Now, in Sensation Comics number 2, released on February 1942, that's where we first meet a reoccurring villain, Dr. Poison. The doctor works for the Nazis, not a surprise, working on a drug called Reverso, which was going to poison the drinking water of the enemy, causing those who drank it to do the opposite of what they were commanded. At the end of the series, it's revealed that Dr. Poison is a woman named Princess Maru. We are also introduced to Etta Candy, a young woman who leads the Beta Lambda sorority at Holiday College and oftentimes aids Wonder Woman in her adventure. She is known for her moxie, her love of candy, and for her trademark call, woo woo. We will talk more about her in the Silver Age soon, but know that Robert Kanigher, who would later take over, he actually phased out a lot of the villains and the side characters, including Etta, during his run.
That seems criminal.
Yeah.
She sounds fun.
She was later revived in the 80s. She's coming back, don't worry.
Good. I'm glad she's coming back.
Wonder Woman number 6, published in September 1943. So at this time, Sensation Comics was actually rebranded to Wonder Woman. If you think about it, Sensations number 1 is now known as Wonder Woman number 1. So Wonder Woman number 6, we are actually introduced to Priscilla Rich. She's a spokesperson for a charity and becomes jealous of Wonder Woman when her water tank escape act steals the show and the attention away from her. After a date cancels on her so that he can go to a party which was featuring Wonder Woman, she is filled with envy. Her rage causes her to create an alter ego. She creates an outfit using a cheetah skin rug and becomes Cheetah. There's been a few other Cheetah alter egos throughout the run of Wonder Woman, but one that we're probably most familiar with is the one that's portrayed by Kristen Wiig in 1984. That was Barbara Minerva. So her first appearance was actually in Wonder Woman Volume 2, number 8, which was published in 1987. In that, she's an archaeologist. She discovers a lost city, but is badly injured. So a ritual is performed. The ritual is intended to restore her health, but the alien woman who was regarded as the avatar of their cheetah god. So when the ritual is actually completed, she has now the ability to transform into a cheetah during the full moon. So something that reoccurs is Steve Trevor will oftentimes call Wonder Woman his angel. And oftentimes when the day is saved, he will actually be given credit for the victory, but he always makes it a point to say that the credit goes to his angel, Wonder Woman. Another thing to mention is that this is actually the first superhero who openly advocated against guns and gun use.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void were prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
I know it's not known as DC, but I'm just going to refer to DC just for the sake of understanding.
For sure.
So DC was getting concerned about this Wonder Woman character, not because she's a female, but because the comic was getting banned because of how she was dressed. And some of the members of the editorial advisory board, they actually got together and resigned in protest over Wonder Woman and the fact that she was constantly in bondage. They were getting fan mail from male readers about how they enjoyed the character, describing how she looked, how she dressed, getting bound, etc. DC was worried that they were encouraging this, quote, soft porn material. They brought this concern up to Marston, and he really just kind of laughed it off, saying that what people think and fantasize about on their own, as long as they're not hurting anyone, he didn't really see much of an issue with it. Plus, it was difficult for them to argue with a guy who had a PhD in psychology. To help counter this argument, DC actually hired psychologist Loretta Bender, who ran a children's ward at Bellevue Hospital. They actually sent her a number of Wonder Woman comics to see what she thought, and turns out she loved them. She didn't find anything wrong with the comic or Marston and what he was doing. She even made a similar case that Marston made when he defended comics, saying that these stories read like folklore and fairy tales. While fairy tales deal with fear and death, Wonder Woman was symbolic because it helped readers deal with the struggle between sexes and gender dynamics. Something that all comics were dealing with was Dr. Frederick Wertham, who was most known for his book Seduction of the Innocent, in which he described overt and covert depictions of violence, sex, drug use, and other adult fares within crime comics. Now, comic books were looked at by the public as inherently evil, and many protests involved burning them. In 1946, Wertham opened the Lafayette Clinic in Harlem. It was a low-cost psychiatric clinic specializing in black teenagers. Now, he noticed that many of his troubled patients read comic books and concluded that this was to explain their bad behavior.
Thank God none of them were eating peanut butter, right? Peanut butter would be banned.
Yeah. It has nothing to do with like low income discrimination.
It's not like poverty ruins your life.
Yeah. This is kind of like the correlation between like polio and ice cream.
Yep.
So he wrote in his book that these comics were glorifying violence and other subjects deemed inappropriate for younger audiences. Because of this, he was invited to appear before the Senate Committee of Juvenile Delinquency. He pointed out that these comics use violence to solve issues, like with Batman and Superman, but for Wonder Woman, he pointed out that because she's strong and independent, this implied that she was a lesbian, an impure thought that would corrupt young minds.
Evil lesbians.
Yes.
We have one character who doesn't do that, but because she's a woman, clearly she's a lesbian.
I do appreciate that it took until 1946 or thereabouts for anyone to insinuate that a young woman living on an island entirely made up of other young women is a lesbian. Like, it took that long for us to get there. We'll talk about that more in a minute, but it's impressive that it took that long.
Yeah. Wertham also had some very choice words about the relationship between Batman and Robin, so we've all thought it. As a response, the Comics Code Authority was created, a third party that would review comics, and if it met the pre-established list of standards, it would, on the cover, receive a CCA stamp. If it was not up to code, the story was actually sent back with changes, or the story would actually have to be scrapped entirely. You can actually read the full list. I did pick out a few of my favorite ones. So here's one of the rules. Crimes shall never be presented in such a way as to create sympathy for the criminal, to promote distrust of the forces of law and justice, and to inspire others with a desire to imitate criminals. Another one is no comic magazine shall use the words horror or terror in its title. Scenes dealing with or instruments associated with Walking Dead, torture, vampires, vampirism, ghouls, cannibalism, and werewolfism are prohibited. And then females shall be drawn realistically without exaggeration to any physical qualities.
That list reads like the recent list of banned tags on Tumblr. like I don't know if you guys heard about this, but Apple just like did a big update on like what's permitted. And in order to make sure that their app doesn't get taken down yet again, Tumblr was like, oh, well, we're just going to ban all of these tags. And it included things like cannibalism and the word girl. So it kind of literally just reads like that list.
Yep.
Oh, man. When I think of the comics code thing, I think of that seal. I immediately think about the opening of Into the Spider-Verse, which is still the greatest superhero movie ever made. Now I want to go through that whole list and check, does this movie actually pass the Comics Code Authority? I mean...
There's no way.
Yeah,
no way.
Definitely not.
I mean, considering that his uncle is a sympathetic villain, that's got to be against the code.
Yeah, the first rule is immediately broken. It's really interesting. The code eventually evolved over time, and I think it wasn't until recently. I think it was like the 2000s that all comic book publishers were just like, why the hell are we using this code anymore? And they just abandoned it entirely. What's ironic is that Wortham was actually not in favor of this code. He actually just wanted comic book publishers to understand the negative impact their material had and the responsibilities that came with comics.
That's really interesting that you say that, because I do think that media has an effect on people more than some people will be willing to talk about. Don't agree in the effects that this guy was specifically laying out, but I do agree with him in the sense that having a list of rules is not the way to make that better. It's something where I don't know how you could, as an industry, regulate to make it better, but I definitely think it's true that media affects people in ways that they're not always willing to admit.
He's the guy that you agree with at a party for like a significant amount of time until he brings
Yes,
up
absolutely. You're talking to a stranger at a party and you're like, yeah, I totally get what you're saying. Oh no, I don't think that at all.
He's the guy that's like, maybe crypto isn't great. Also, vaccines don't work. And you're like, hang on, back up.
So unfortunately, in 1947, William Moulton Marston passed away due to cancer. For Elizabeth and Olive, they actually continued to live together until Olive's death in 1990, and then Elizabeth passed away soon after in 1993. To take over Wonder Woman was a good friend of Marston's, Robert Kanigher. He is best known for creating Barry Allen as the Flash, and he's looked at as being responsible for kicking off the Silver Age of comics. Kanigher took over as the head writer and editor, so there was really little to no overhead to what he was doing, which means he could just do whatever the hell he wanted to do. He actually was in this position for the next 22 years. So although Joy Hummel did not continue writing for Wonder Woman after Marston's death, Harry Peters continued to illustrate for the comic and ended up drawing the character for a total of 18 years. After Peters' retirement, Ross Audru and Mike Esposito took over illustrations in the late 50s, and at that time, Kanigher found his opportunity to really change the character.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
There were these stories about Diana where she was a teenager, in that she was known as Wonder Girl. And when she was a little girl, she was then known as Wonder Tot. Soon after, Wonder Woman would actually team up with herself, yes, as Wonder Woman, Wonder Girl, and Wonder Tot. And with the help of her mother, Queen Hippolyta, who would actually go by Leda or Wonder Queen, it was this story which was done in a story titled The Impossible Day. He introduced a feuding love battle between the characters Merman, Birdman, Amoeba Man, and Steve Trevor. Even Wonder Girl had her love disputes between Bird Boy and Merboy. There was even a strange story where Wonder Woman gets trapped in the first issues of Wonder Woman and revisits her origin. For Wonder Girl, DC ran into an issue with her being young Diana. They wanted to include her in as one of the founding members of Teen Titans. So instead, they changed the character to be a completely different Amazonian, Donna Troy, and she kept the name Wonder Girl. Elizabeth Marston was outspoken about the changes and did not like where Kanigher was going with the character in Wonder Woman. Robert did ask her to dinner to discuss her dislikes and how to change the character, but during the dinner, she actually did not mention or want to talk about Wonder Woman. In Wonder Woman number 105, which is published in April 1959, Diana's origin is revamped in the issue titled The Secret Origin of Wonder Woman. In this, Queen Hippolyta gives birth to Diana. Aphrodite, the goddess of love, visits Diana and blesses her, and tells her that she is going to be the fairest maid in all the land. The baby is also visited by Athena, who would give her her wisdom. Mercury was amazed by the tot's speed, as well as Hercules, who was impressed by the girl's strength. It's kind of weird that Hercules visited, even though he oppressed them many years ago, but I guess he forgot about that. During Diana's young life, she was part of the world, but then after many wars, all of the world's men died. So Diana, she actually built a boat and then sailed to Paradise Island, bringing a bunch of women with her. In March 1960, Wonder Woman became one of the founding members of the Justice League in The Brave and the Bold number 28. Now, this is an issue that we've covered in our Justice League episode. Now, what stands out about her character is that she's always stood alone as her own hero, and she didn't team up with other heroes. This was established in the Golden Age when William Marston continually denied any team-ups with any other DC heroes, like with the Justice Society of America. They had Batman and Superman. They would join with the Justice Society, and oftentimes they would team up with each other, but Wonder Woman was always a standalone character. So to make her a founding member of a superhero team actually seemed quite out of character for her.
At the top of the episode, I mentioned Wonder Woman's a really complicated character for me personally. And that largely has to do with the fact that she was a female superhero that was created to sell feminism to men. Ostensibly, like, she's not there to challenge the cultural norms that hold women back. She's there to make strength palatable for male readers. That's difficult because inherently, like, the system that she is being born into is one that will hold her back. We see that time and time again. Like, I'm not sure if you mentioned this, but the first time that she appears as a member of the Justice League is in 1942. And she's there as their secretary.
Oh.
She's not there as a member of the team. She's there to, like, run their office administration.
There's been multiple iterations where, like, she has been placed as a secretary, and in the Linda Carter TV show as well, like, her alter ego is being a secretary and not a nurse.
No disrespect to secretaries. I did that work for a while before I landed in my current career. It is, like, difficult work, but it is also one that women tend to get pigeonholed into because there's not a lot of corporate advancement from that role typically. And it's one that's, like, very easy to, like, come and go from as you get married and have children. So it's, like, very difficult to hear that this person who's allegedly, like, supposed to be this bastion of femininity and strength is being relegated to those roles time and time again. Not to mention, Marsden is quoted multiple times and in multiple places saying that, like, women enjoy submission. It's fine. No disrespect to anyone's, like, what they want to do in the bedroom is their thing. That's not what I'm talking about. But, like, the idea that in all of her storylines, she is still, like, forced to operate within the confines of this heteronormative society, even though she comes from a place that's, like, theoretically very different. She immediately sees this perfect man and has to leave the island and go, like, see what the rest of the world is about because, oh my God, this pilot's so beautiful. It's like, is he? Is he? Because, like, I'm not a betting woman, but, like, my money says you'd probably be happier on an island with all of your sisters.
I definitely feel like this is my own cis male privilege, lack of understanding on this, where I have certainly for so much of my life would have not seen those problems with Wonder Woman that you're very clearly laying out. I was definitely one of those people whose definition of what a well-written female character is somebody on the crew of Firefly, and now I'm recognizing, you know, the problems with that.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy that you're bringing up that perspective, because there's definitely aspects of the story that I do not innately interrogate and do not innately go, oh, wait a minute, let's think a little bit deeper on what is the good and what is the bad here.
That is not to say that she was not for her time a really like fantastic definition of what it means to be a strong woman. There are definitely boundaries that I think that she broke as a character, but it's also like very difficult to look at her with like a modern lens from like the perspective of someone who is more engaged and like raised in third wave, and maybe if we're getting into it, kind of fourth wave feminism, if we think that we're there yet. From a first wave feminism standpoint, like, yes, she's great. Even from a second wave feminism standpoint, yes, she's great. And like the two things that kind of are interesting about those two movements is that they were really defined around heteronormative relationships and around like heteronormative roles in society. And so like, yes, the fact that she does like swing a punch and can hold her own in a fight is like a great start. But if we stop there and we maintain that status quo, she will never develop as a character. The problems with her as a feminist icon become immediately more apparent as we try to expand our definition of like what it means to be an equal member of society.
Using heteronormative definition of what we expect out of women, I think it's also really interesting in the context of the creator and the creator's personal life, because it feels very clear that Olive and Elizabeth, it seems very clear that their relationship was really, really strong, that they stayed together even after he died. But the story of how it began with the ultimatum
is really questionable. The ultimatum itself, and also the fact that like here's this professor taking advantage of his student is like seriously suspect on like so many levels.
It's so funny how the mirrors in this story to the male figure who thinks that he's being a feminist, and really when you start to pick it apart, there is a ton of problems in there. But it really makes me wonder how much his partners thought of Wonder Woman, how they interact with that character. Obviously, they had some say in some of the early creation of it, but it is really curious to me, like, what their relationship to the character was.
I mean, I obviously, like, can't speak for their relationship specifically, but based on what I know, like, historically about women's point of view through history, there's, like, a high probability that they looked at that and saw it as empowering as, like, adult women, because she was someone who was able to be, like, smart and sexy and fun and, like, be, like, the girl that has it all, even though, like, we now understand that that is a myth, and that is a myth that's designed to, like, hold people back.
After Kanigher's run with Wonder Woman, the character was passed on to Justice League artist Mike Sekowsky and writer Denny O'Neil in 1968. Now, if you thought that Kanigher drastically changed the character, Sekowsky took the wheel and just did a complete 180 with her. During the 60s and 70s, the Cold War was on everyone's mind, and pop culture reflected it with spy thrillers like James Bond, The Avengers, no, not that Avengers, the other Avengers, and The Man from U.N.C.L.E. With Wonder Woman's sales plummeting, they figure why not change the character to make her more appealing to modern audiences. In this, Diana loses her powers and her costume. She instead fights crime using kung fu that she learned from a blind Chinese mentor named I Ching. She even explores spirituality. Diana wears more fashionable outfits to use as a disguise to get into high society events. She also opens her own fashion boutique dedicated to, quote, mod fashion. They also kill off Steve Trevor, which is strange because Diana chose to lose her powers for Steve. Sekowsky is also known to hate, like he absolutely loathed Kanigher, and in Wonder Woman number 188, Wonder Woman actually takes down a shoplifter who is dressed as a woman, reveals that it's a man, and he very much resembles Kanigher.
Having someone dress up like a woman only to be revealed as an evil, horrible man is like deeply transphobic.
Yeah.
Oh, that one like plot line is like, holy smokes. What's going on here, guys?
This take on Wonder Woman is notorious for being the worst storyline ever created for this character. Wonder Woman did see an increase in sales, but they also saw an increase in criticism. The most notably from Miss Magazine, which actually featured Wonder Woman on the cover of one of their early issues, which read Wonder Woman for President and, quote, Peace and Justice in 72. Wonder Woman would make a second cover appearance on the 40th anniversary issue in 2012, surrounded by protesters holding up signs that say, Stop the War on Women. The idea of putting Wonder Woman on the cover was to publicly lobby DC Comics to show readers how great Wonder Woman used to be in the Golden Ages. In 1972, Joanne Edgar wrote about the ridiculous changes being made to the iconic character. She mentions that when she was a kid, she wanted to trade comic books with the other boys. Wonder Woman was so unpopular with them that she would oftentimes have to give 3 of her Wonder Woman comics to get 1 Superman comic. She notes the next year, 1973, Wonder Woman, for the first time, will have their first woman editor, Dorothy Woolfolk, and hopefully she can redeem the character. She ends the article with saying, quote, "But will she still have to trade 3 for 1 against Superman?" In 1973, Gloria Steinem, who is the editor of Ms. Magazine, she was asked by DC to be a writer for Wonder Woman. In Wonder Woman 204, she put together a 6-issue series where Diana went back to Paradise Island, regained her powers and her costume. Kanigher, when he stepped down as an editor, he actually did not leave, but he actually continued to be a writer for the series. In response to the criticism and the changes, he did create a new character. Her name was Nubia, known as Wonder Woman's, quote, black sister. She was molded from black clay and brought to life by Aphrodite. But instead of being raised by Amazon women, she was actually stolen by Ares. And under his control, she would actually have to fight for him.
And there's some major issues with race.
As soon as I heard there was a character named Nubia, I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah, it was like, oh, God.
Diana managed to break the curse, and she became an ally from there on. Kanigher also introduced a sniper character that Diana needed to take down, and the first victim that the sniper happens to kill was actually a female editor of a unknown magazine. So, yeah, he seemed a bit bitter about this. And then to bring Wonder Woman back to the Justice League of America, there was actually a 2-year arc, mostly written by Martin Pasco, where Diana underwent 12 trials, each monitored by members of the JLA, to prove that she was worthy again to be part of the team. Steve Trevor was then brought back to life by Aphrodite. He then changed his name to Steve Howard, and now he works for the UN.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Something that we mentioned before is that we probably most know Linda Carter as being the first live-action Wonder Woman, but that is not actually the case, because Wonder Woman actually first appeared in 1967. It was in a, and this is quite the problematic title, but it was in a television short, which is just about 5 minutes long. It was titled Wonder Woman, Who's Afraid of Diana Prince?
Wonder Woman, who knows she has the strength of Hercules, who knows she has the wisdom of Athena, who knows she has the speed of Mercury, and who thinks she has the beauty of Aphrodite.
Which makes no sense whatsoever, but you know that they were trying to capitalize on Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. It was in the hopes that it could get picked up for a series. It starred Ella Wood Walker as Diana Prince. In it, Wonder Woman is called to action. She changes by going through a revolving door closet and comically just kind of floats and flies away. It's one of those situations where, like, when you watch stage productions like Peter Pan, you can see the strings and she's kind of like, it seems like it's just one guy who's just like trying to yank her out of the screen. It's pretty bad. It felt almost like a screen test, and they shot it like it was a sitcom. Obviously that did not get picked up, but Wonder Woman would appear on TV again, but in 1972. And this time she was actually animated and appeared as a guest in an episode of The Brady Kids, in an episode titled It's All Greek to Me.
Will you please tell my sister that brains are more important than brawn?
Well, as Diana Prince, I should say that brains are more important. But being Wonder Woman, I know the value of physical conditioning, too.
Wonder Woman does become a regular character throughout the bumpy run of the Super Friends, which premiered in 1973. A live-action Wonder Woman wouldn't be seen on television until 1974 for a made-for-TV movie simply titled Wonder Woman, and it starred Kathy Lee Crosby.
It was perhaps inevitable that the man-made world would one day require a unique woman. A Wonder Woman. You are that unique woman, Diana. You will be the Wonder Woman.
With the hope that the movie would launch a series, but that wasn't actually picked up. Although, even though the movie has been mostly dismissed, it is important because this is the first time that Paradise Island has ever been referred to as Themyscira. When I worked at Warner Brothers, every once in a while we do like movie nights. This was like just before the premiere of Wonder Woman. We had a manager over there who was like obsessed with Wonder Woman. He absolutely adored the character. Like if you walked into his office, it was just like Funko Pops of every iteration of Wonder Woman all around. And he's like, guys, for our movie night, we are going to watch the Kathy Lee Crosby Wonder Woman. And it is... it was great. A year later, in 1975, this is where we get the Wonder Woman series starring Lynda Carter. Now, to avoid confusion with the TV movie, which was done before the series, they actually titled this The New Adventures of Wonder Woman. After season 2, the show was simply titled Wonder Woman. The show was developed by Stanley Ralph Ross, who previously wrote for The Man from U.N.C.L.E., the 1966 Batman, The Monkees, and Columbo. The show closely resembled the origin story that William Marston created for Wonder Woman and actually took place during World War II, and most of her enemies were typically Nazis. During the 70s and during the run of the TV series, the comics changed the setting to take place during World War II, just like the show, but subsequently, they also had a storyline that took place in the 70s, which was all explained away with the multiverse. Now, when the TV series then took place in the 70s, the comic book then abandoned the 40s era and only focused on the contemporary timeline. And then Steve Trevor, or Steve Howard as he's known as now, he was then killed off. When Jerry Conway wrote for Wonder Woman in 1980, Steve Trevor was then brought back to life again. David, I know we were discussing earlier about like these movie lists.
Oh, yeah.
There was something that was actually brought up to me yesterday about movies that starred Chris Pine in which he is killed off and then brought back to life. I actually told him immediately afterwards, I was like, that's really funny you bring that up because Steve Trevor was killed off twice and brought back to life twice. The list is fandom films in which Chris Pine dies and is later brought back to life or replaced with a decoy, who then proceeds to help save the world from an evil villain with special abilities. Now, do you want to take a guess as to which 4 of those movies are?
Well, we got Wonder Woman.
Yes.
We've got Star Trek.
Yes.
It sounds like the way you describe that, Into the Spider-Verse, would fall into that.
Yes. I don't think you'll get the last one, though.
I wouldn't know. I don't know if you have any guesses, Emma.
I'm thinking. I'm not a huge Chris Pine fan, but...
I'll give you a hint. It's an animated film.
Oh.
It's Rise of the Guardians.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't think anyone would get that, but I did find that really funny.
Yeah.
That was there. It seemed like Conway's goal was to retcon Wonder Woman by retelling her origin story. Now, Diana's mind is then erased by the mist of nepenthe. Steve Trevor, he crash lands on Paradise Island, but from a different universe and then lands in Earth 1. Diana reclaims the title of Wonder Woman. She joins Trevor in military intelligence with side characters Etta Candy and General Darnell. So Etta Candy has finally come back.
Glad to see she's back in play.
Yeah.
Thank God, you're not dead.
In DC Comics Presents number 41, which was published in January 1982, writer Roy Thomas and penciler Gene Colan replaced the iconic eagle on her costume with a stylized WW instead. Like with many fans, if you change something, they are going to hate it, and they did, stating that it was a ripoff of the Superman S. The emblem stayed regardless of the pushback, and now actually has become a staple of her costume now. It wasn't just Wonder Woman dealing with different Earths. the multiverse, and timelines, DC was having this issue with a lot of their characters. So a big change needed to happen. So the publishers decided to hit the big reset button, which led to the 1986 crossover comic Crisis on Infinite Earths. I don't plan on going into much detail there. Basically, all you need to know is that Wonder Woman and all of DC characters are now given just a reset to start fresh, and basically they don't have to keep continuity with whatever was established before. After Crisis in 1987, Greg Potter was hired to rework the character. He and editor Janice Race spent months working on a new storyline before writer/artist George Perez joined the team. After issue 2, Potter left the series, leaving Perez to be the head writer. With the assistance of Len Wein and Mindy Newell, they produced 62 issues from 1987 to 1992. George Perez is actually probably known as one of the best known artists and writers of Wonder Woman. Before Wonder Woman, he was a penciler for the New Teen Titans and Crisis on Infinite Earths, and would later pencil issues for Marvel with the Avengers series, specifically the 6-issue run of the Infinity Gauntlet series in 1991. George Perez actually, he came up quite a lot in this research, and whenever a lot of like hardcore Wonder Woman fans, they would oftentimes like refer to him as like, this is kind of the staple Wonder Woman. Even like Patty Jenkins, when she was putting together the script, like she specifically said like the George Perez run was a huge influence on the script. Something that Perez made sure to do when rebooting Wonder Woman was to bring her back to her Greek myth roots. She possessed stunning beauty and a loving heart from Aphrodite, great wisdom from Athena, power and strength from Demeter, sisterhood of fire from Hestia, unity with beasts and the instincts and prowess of a hunter from Artemis, and speed and the power of flight from Hermes. Her lasso of truth was forged by Hephaestus, and not from Aphrodite's girdle. Even though Themyscira has been brought up in the Wonder Woman TV movie, in the TV series, and even in the Super Friends, for the first time in the comics, Paradise Island is now referred to as Themyscira, and they even tried to unite the island with the rest of the world. When they open the island to the world, Diana actually convinces Hippolyta to make Lois Lane an ambassador on Themyscira and actually makes her an honorary Amazon. The major overarching theme Perez brought to Wonder Woman is that she is about peace. Wonder Woman's red, white, and blue outfit is actually explained. So in this, Steve Trevor's mother, Diana Trevor, she crash lands on Themyscira when she's on duty as a U.S. Army pilot. After landing, she finds herself in the middle of a battle between the Amazons and Codus. Diana sacrifices herself to wound the demon, allowing the Amazons to reseal the open portal. They honor her by clothing her body in American flag theme armor. Wonder Woman's costume is then designed in honor of her, and then Steve would later be sent by Eris to attempt to bomb the island.
Cool.
I mean, yeah. It's quite the workaround, but it's better than whatever they came up with before.
I love like the lengths that they had to go to be like, aha, this woman from Greek myth, actually she's an American imperialist and we can prove it. It's like, what?
Yeah. In this new storyline, Diana is more naive and innocent when she arrives into the new world. She first speaks Greek when she enters the real world, and when she finally comes around to speaking English, she's asked as to how she learned, and she replies with, "If one listens, one learns." Diana learns about the world from Greek culture scholar Julia Capitelis and her daughter Vanessa. Trevor is now part of the Air Force and significantly older than Diana. Instead of a romance between those two, Trevor is instead with Etta Candy.
Good for Etta.
Yeah, she deserves love. Wonder Woman's main villains were Ares, Circe, Cheetah, and the Silver Swan.
It's always really interesting to me to see how and when Circe pops up in literature. I don't know a ton about her as a villain, but her origin point in Greek myth is that she's like the horrible, evil witch that like seduces Odysseus and like holds him on the island in her thrall. There's a really good book that was recently released called Circe, that kind of like reframes her narrative as like a woman that chose to leave a heteronormative male society to like live life on her own, independent of that. Ever since I read that book and ever since I kind of like took on that point of view about Cersei, it's always kind of like, where are we seeing her pop up? And it is fascinating to me that she would suddenly be dropped in as a villain for Wonder Woman.
Honestly, I really know nothing about Cersei other than like Game of Thrones, but I figure that's like kind of maybe related. That's just me assuming, but I had no idea.
Turtles has a character that's slightly more related, but...
Yes. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. After Perez, William Messner Loebs took over as the writer and Mike Deodato became the artist. Now, Deodato was criticized for making all the Amazons appear Caucasian with a few exceptions. A few of them looked Asian.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Diversity.
Diversity wins, guys.
William introduced the red-headed Amazon Artemis, who took over as Wonder Woman for a short time. To humanize Diana, they had her work in a fast food restaurant called Taco Wiz.
Oh boy.
Not secretary, but not
not
better.
really high achieving.
Yeah.
Oh God, poor Diana.
Yeah. Next was John Byrne, who took over from 1995 to 1998. In his run, Hippolyta serves as Wonder Woman during the 1940s, making her the Golden Age Wonder Woman. And then they reintroduced the character Nubia. So I like the idea that Hippolyta is the Golden Age and be like, we're dealing with a new Wonder Woman now. So I really like that introduction there. From 1998 to 2000, Eric Luke wrote for the comic book. He's most known for creating the Wonder Dome, a floating palace where Diana lived. Next, Phil Jimenez, a penciler, took over the comic until 2003 and would often depict Diana as a diplomat, scientist, and activist who worked to help women across the globe become more self-sufficient.
Finally.
Yeah.
Finally a good job for our girl.
Yeah.
She's like gone through like the stages of like Barbie's dream house, where like Barbie started out working as like a teacher and then like a secretary, and then she like worked at the mall, and now finally she's like a doctor. I'm glad Wonder Woman's on the same career path.
Like something that I applaud with Patty Jenkins' Wonder Woman is that she's working as like in a museum, or like an archaeologist, and like that makes perfect sense. Like if she's been around for this long,
of course she would have a lot to say about archaeology.
Yeah, like she would know this. Like that's her expertise right there. And she like fell directly for that job instead of working at Taco Wiz.
Taco Wiz.
Walt Simonson was next, and he did a 6-issue homage to the 70s era to show a story where Diana loses her powers. Great job, guys. When Greg Rucka took over to write, he created a villainous, ruthless businesswoman character, Veronica Cale, who uses the media to discredit Wonder Woman.
Not a girl boss. Anything but a girl boss.
And this is where I'm going to end the history of Wonder Woman in the comics. I'm not going to go into the New 52 series just because in relation to this Wonder Woman movie, it has not happened yet, which means that information is not known to the initial writers of this.
I'm so happy that we have your perspective on this. A lot of that perspective that Dan and I are just going to innately be missing.
This is why I thought it was important to like have you on for this perspective, because in our pre-conversation, I was like having two cis male podcast hosts
yeah.
talk about women as woke as we think we are. No.
I do think that it's also really interesting, and I know that we're not really to this point in the conversation yet, but given Whedon's track record with women on set and women in his stories, I do find it really interesting that he was the person who was originally tapped to write for Wonder Woman. Like, you can kind of see parallels between the problems in his work and the problems that are inherent with Wonder Woman, the character, over time. I'm not going to cut him any slack, but I think that like that kind of speaks to a larger issue surrounding how we talk about strength in women in film and movies and whatever.
And that is something that we are going to get into our second discussion on Wonder Woman. Like I said, this is the most in-depth character I've had to go through.
Yeah.
So we are going to actually end the episode here.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Before we go, Emma, if people want to hear more from you, people like you, where can they find you?
I'm at the Instagram handle, please call me Mac, M-A-C, just Instagram. I don't know. I mean, if you really want to check out my work, you can come visit my portfolio at emmahull.com and see some really good advertising.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's where I am online.
Excellent.
And you can find more episodes of this podcast at our website, pipedreampodcasts.com, where you can also listen to Come on Fahookwapods, as well as the Mystery Shack Look Back and Escape from Vault Disney. While you're there, you can find links to our social media pages and our email address. As we are reaching the end of our season, this is when we love getting a lot of emails about requests for future films as we start figuring out what's going to be season 4.
Yeah, so get them in as soon as possible, because for some weird reason, whenever we put out the email episode, everyone's like, oh, yeah, we have to email them now. You're not going to be featured until season 5.
That email address, again, is notgetmade@gmail.com. That's going to go ahead and wrap us up. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank you.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18 plus.